Okay, so you've probably seen it all over the place online, right? These AI chatbots,
Yep.
everyone's saying they can answer anything, but what are they really? Today we're going to break it all down, figure out how they actually work, and don't worry, no crazy tech jargon to trip us up. Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah, we're keeping it straightforward. The goal today is for everyone to really get large language models, or LLMs. Whether you're hearing about this for the first time or you've caught bits and pieces, we'll make it crystal clear.
To do that, we're using this awesome YouTube video by Andrej Karpathy, How I Use LLMs. He really knows his stuff, so think of this like us taking his expert explanation, boiling it down so you get the essentials super fast. If this whole AI chatbot thing has piqued your curiosity but you didn't know where to start, this is it.
By the end of this, you'll have the basics down pat for sure. What LLMs are, how they work, the foundation.
All right, so when most people hear LLM, the first thing they think of is ChatGPT. It kind of took the world by storm a couple years back, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. ChatGPT from OpenAI 2022, that was the big one. The first time anyone could just chat with an AI, like a normal text conversation.
Yeah.
And people went nuts for it.
Totally viral, yeah. And it's crazy how much has happened since then, even just to now,
Yeah.
2025. It's way bigger than just ChatGPT, right? Like a whole ecosystem sprung up.
It really has. ChatGPT cracked things wide open. Now we've got Google's Gemini, there's Meta, Microsoft's in the game with Copilot.
It's not just the giant companies either, right? There's some really interesting startups jumping in.
Exactly. You've got Anthropic with Claude, Elon Musk has XAI and their Grok model. And it's not just a US thing either. Internationally, there's DeepSeek from China and from France, LlamaChat and Mistral. It's global, moving super fast.
So with all these different models popping up, is there a way to tell how they actually compare? Like which one's better at certain things?
Yeah.
For those who want to go deep, there are platforms tracking this stuff. Chatbot Arena's one, and there's the SEAL leaderboard from Scale. They rank and evaluate different models on various tasks. Pretty handy if you want to see which LLMs excel in specific areas.
Okay, so with all that choice, why are we focusing on OpenAI's ChatGPT, at least to start off?
Good question. The field's exploding, but ChatGPT's got a unique position. Like Karpathy says, it's the original gangster of the bunch, the one that really grabbed everyone's attention. Plus, it's still one of the most popular, packed with features, probably because it's had more time to develop. Gives us a really good base to learn the fundamentals that a lot of other LLMs are built on, too.
Makes sense. So super basic level,
Uh-huh.
how do we use these LLMs like ChatGPT? What's the interaction like?
Super simple. You type in some text, the LLM types back, like chatting with a really knowledgeable friend, maybe a little different kind of friend.
And they're not bad writers either, right? Karpathy had that haiku example that was pretty cool.
He did. Words flow like a stream. Endless echo, never mind ghost of thought unseen. Shows you how they can actually create different kinds of text. Poems, emails, even computer code, they can do it all.
And the way we see it on our screens, with those chat bubbles going back and forth, that's meant to make it feel conversational. But what's actually happening with our text behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes, everything we type and everything the model replies with gets broken down into tokens. Think of them like the little Lego bricks of language that the LLM works with. It's not understanding words like we do. It's a master of predicting the next little piece of text, that next token. That's a big difference, helps us understand what they're good at and where they struggle.
Tokens. Interesting.
Yeah.
Any way to actually see this happening, how a sentence gets turned into tokens?
Yeah, there are tools for that. Karpathy mentions Tick Tokenizer. You feed it text, it shows you exactly how it's split into those tokens, gives you a peek into how the model is seeing language.
So we give a text, gets chopped up, then tokens get put back together for the reply. How does the LLM remember what we've been saying? That's where the context window comes in, right?
That's it. The context window is like the LLM's short-term memory, where it keeps track of the current conversation. It's just one big sequence of all those tokens, yours and its, from the start of the chat. So when you're going back and forth with ChatGPT, it's that window that lets it refer back to things you said earlier, makes it feel like a continuous conversation.
So it remembers what we've talked about, but only within that session.
Right. Anything within that context window is fresh in its mind, so to speak.
Yeah.
It uses that to make sure its answers are relevant, make sense in the flow of what you're talking about.
And if we start a whole new chat, that window's wiped clean.
Yep. Fresh chat, fresh start, like hitting the reset button. It doesn't remember stuff from previous conversations. It's all about what's in that current context window.
Karpathy used a little cartoon in his video to explain this token sequence thing. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, it's like taking turns. You start with an empty sequence, then you, the user, you add your tokens by typing in your question or whatever you're saying. When you hit enter, it's like passing the baton. The LLM gets its turn and it adds its own sequence of tokens back to that window. It's this back and forth. You contribute some tokens, it contributes some, and it keeps going like that. When the model's done with its turn, it adds a special done token, like saying, okay, your turn again.
Got it. So this LLM, this thing we're talking to, what is it, fundamentally? Karpathy described it as a 1 TB zip file, which is a pretty wild analogy. What does that actually represent?
It's actually a great way to visualize it. Imagine the LLM like this self-contained entity, a giant file sitting on your computer. That 1 TB zip file is representing the trillions of parameters that make up the neural network. You
Mm.
can think of them like tiny little knobs and dials that the model has learned to adjust based on all the text it's processed. That's how it figures out language, how it understands and creates stuff.
So how does it get all that information crammed into that zip file with all those parameters?
Yeah.
That's through the training process, right?
Yep. Two main steps. Pre-training and then post-training. Pre-training is like, imagine the model going to this ridiculously huge library that has basically all the text from the internet. And it reads and learns to predict what word comes next in any sequence. That's how it builds its vast knowledge. But it's lossy and probabilistic, meaning it doesn't perfectly remember everything. Think of it like making a copy of a picture and shrinking the file size. You get the main image, but some tiny details get lost. And if you copy that copy, it gets even fuzzier. Kind of like how LLMs store information.
So it basically reads the whole internet and plays a giant game of guess the next word.
In a nutshell, yeah. By doing that over and over with tons of internet text, the neural network learns language patterns, how ideas connect, and soaks up a crazy amount of info about the world.
Then there's that second step, the post-training. What's the point of that one?
Post-training is about making it more helpful, more conversational. Karpathy jokes that it's like attaching a smiley face. After all that pre-training, it's trained again, but this time on a specific data set of human-generated conversations. This is how it learns to act like a helpful assistant, answering questions and talking in a way that feels natural to us.
So pre-training gives it the knowledge, post-training teaches it manners.
Perfect way to put it. Pre-training lays the foundation, post-training shapes how it interacts.
This pre-training thing sounds intense. Does that mean these models are constantly updating, staying on top of all the newest information?
Not really. Pre-training takes a ton of computing power, can take months to do it right. It's so expensive and time-consuming that it doesn't happen all the time. Most LLMs have a knowledge cutoff. Their knowledge is only up to a certain point. Like it might have been trained on data up to a year ago, so anything that happened after that, it wouldn't know about.
Makes sense. So out of the box, they don't have access to live news, real-time stuff like that.
Exactly. At their core, LLMs like ChatGPT are self-contained. They don't have a calculator built in, can't browse the web, can't run code, unless those features were specifically added on later, which maybe we'll talk about another time. Initially, it's all about that zip file, all that compressed knowledge and conversation patterns it learned.
Karpathy had a really good, concise summary of what ChatGPT actually is. You mind sharing that again?
Sure. He said, "Hi, I'm ChatGPT. I am a 1 TB zip file. My knowledge comes from the internet, which I read in its entirety about 6 months ago, and I only remember vaguely. My winning personality was programmed by example by human labelers at OpenAI."
I love that. That vaguely remember bit really drives home the point that their knowledge isn't perfect.
Yeah, it's not like they have a photographic memory of everything. It's more like a compressed, slightly blurry version of all that data. Things that were mentioned more often on the internet, those will be clearer in their memory than things that weren't as common.
So when we're using them, what should our expectations be? How accurate will their answers be, especially if we're asking for specific facts?
Gotta be realistic. Karpathy used the example of asking, how much caffeine's in an Americano? That's pretty common knowledge. Doesn't change that much, so the model's probably going to get it right. But remember, that vaguely remember thing, always good to double check with a reliable source, just in case.
What about when we ask something more complex or very specific?
He gave the example of having a runny nose and asking about medicine. It could give you info about common stuff like Dayquil or NyQuil, maybe list some ingredients, because those are talked about online a lot. But keep in mind, it's like a probabilistic statistical recollection of the internet. Don't take anything like medication details at face value. Always check the real product or ask a doctor.
He also said it's good to start a new chat when you switch to a totally different topic. Why is
Yeah.
that?
Basically, starting a new chat clears that context window. If you keep the same chat going for unrelated stuff, you fill up that memory with irrelevant tokens. It can get confusing for the model, might make its answers less focused, maybe even inaccurate. Plus, a super long context window can make it slower, use more resources, gets a bit pricier to run.
Makes sense. Give it a clean slate for a new subject. Last thing, he mentioned being aware of which model you're using, like GPT-4o versus a smaller one. Why is that important, especially for someone just starting out?
Knowing the model matters because they're not all created equal. Bigger models like GPT-4o, they've been trained on way more data with more computing power, so they tend to know more, be more creative, and write better. Smaller ones, especially the free ones, it might be less powerful, more likely to make mistakes, even hallucinate information that isn't real, and their answers might not be as nuanced. The pricing tiers usually reflect that. You pay more for the more capable models, so knowing which one you're using helps you set the right expectations.
Awesome. So basically, LLMs are these incredibly knowledgeable but slightly forgetful text-based systems
Yeah.
built on a huge amount of squished down internet data, and they've been trained to be good conversationalists.
Exactly. They're simulating understanding, generating text based on what they've learned from all that data.
And this is just scratching the surface, right? Karpathy mentioned all sorts of other capabilities that build on this basic idea.
Oh, yeah, we're just at the tip of the iceberg. Today was about the core concepts. There are tons of tools that can be integrated with LLMs. There's the whole world of multimodality with images and audio and loads of advanced features. Lots more to explore.
For sure. So as you're out there in the world encountering these LLMs, whether it's asking a quick question or using them to brainstorm ideas, just remember that image of the 1 TB zip file. Loads of potential, but it's got its quirks.
And that brings us to our final thought to leave you with. Think about the implications of having access to this compressed knowledge. How could that change how you learn new things, how you work, how you deal with information in the future? It's a pretty big question with a lot of possibilities.